I believe you're a bit of a fan,
Yes,
which
yes,
is very nice.
yes, yeah. Well, I often call it the greatest publication in the world on the show. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. We are
Yeah.
obviously the greatest publication in the world.
Yeah, I left a note for Johnny Vaughan on Zoe Kravitz's stomach today.
Yes, yes. Well, I'll listen into that later. It's very exciting. It's very exciting actually when you kind of think that anybody reads the stuff that you're vaguely responsible for.
Couldn't do a show without it, to be honest. It's my
Yeah.
absolute crutch.
Why?
Well, because it genuinely has become a bit of a joke with the listeners that because I openly reference the Daily Star whenever I'm using it, and it's become such a known thing that I hoover the Daily Star for content every day that Jenny Faulkner from Smooth now sometimes when she comes into the building in the morning, she hides my copy of the Daily Star because she knows that I'll freak out and I'm nothing without it. So yeah, basically we get a big stack of papers. We get every single newspaper delivered to work every morning, and for years I used to sort of just quickly flick through all of them, looking for anything silly, anything weird, anything stupid to talk about. And over years, I realized that the only one I needed was the Daily Star because it had amalgamated all the weird and stupid, silly stories into one convenient package. So rather than having to flick through 10 papers, I just religiously read one and it's got everything I could possibly need.
It's funny, and okay, this is why basically this is why we're talking. So we were talking about maybe trying to get a Daily Star appearance on your show just to be self-indulgent and meta. But I was thinking probably not me because I feel like I'm not very on brand. How am I what you would have expected a Daily Star journalist to be like?
Oh yeah, I'll be honest. I have got That's a good question. I've never pictured the journalist behind these weird and wonderful articles. That's a very good question. Probably, you know, somebody sat in their mum's basement with a hat made out of tin foil is
I
probably who
am
I
in my own attic.
So, so you're completely not what I was expecting because you're above ground and in your own personal space. So yeah, that's a point. I've never stopped to think about who is behind these articles. Can I ask you a question?
Sure,
Because
yeah.
because for the last 10 years when I've been doing radio, I have to try and find these weird and wonderful, silly stories from around the world. And yet I always, where are your journalists getting their information from? Because they're a day ahead of me.
It's very like the funny thing about the Daily Star is that we are actually proper journalists who've done all
Yes,
sorts of things, but like I think we're all weirdos who like weird stuff.
which is
And
probably
so
why it attracted me.
and it's actually quite like we're quite nice. Like it's not sort of cutthroat and mean like a lot of them. Like we all kind of like each other and we all sort of egg each other on and everybody laughs in conference and we're all trying to make each other laugh all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think they get them from various places. I mean, um, they're just very good at sort of scouring for a particular type of thing.
Yeah, well, because the Daily Star and has got you can tell it, and therefore the people that work behind the scenes at it has a sense of humor, which is quite rare in printed press today. You can tell it's funny, and also, do you know what I do like about them? It's a kind paper, but when it does take the mick out of people, A, it takes the mick out of people very tongue in cheek. It's never cruel or vindictive. But secondly, it takes the mick out of everyone equally, which I think is really important. So it takes the mick out of every big political figure, and it takes the mick out of Donald Trump as much as it takes the mick out of Harry and Meghan, and as much as it takes the mick out of Elon Musk. Basically, anyone that's in a massive public eye figure, it has a zero tolerance on bullshit rule for everybody equally, and I think that's why I like it.
I like that too. We like to, yeah, like I think we're quite sort of, as a group of people, we're maybe a little bit less cutthroat and a little bit sort of, um, we're sort of quite towards the sensitive side, but of kind of journalists in the kind of sort of normal to psychopath bell curve, but we're all just big daft idiots who like
Well,
knock
I think
jokes.
that's why Radio X and Daily Star get along so well, and that's why I think it works with my listeners so much, is because that's pretty much the vibe in the Radio X office as well. I grew up in a household where the mentality was very much when things are sad and heavy to make a joke out of it because it's the only way to get through it. And the world
That's
is,
so,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, the world's so terrifying and scary at the moment that if you let it get you down all the time, we'd all just be sat in the corner, rocking back and forth, chuntering to ourselves, crying. But the I grew up in a, like I say, a household where when things get tough, we might as well make a joke out of it because, crying's not going to help.
That's very, I think that's with all journalists. That's like that sort of horrible, dark sense of humor that's like, well, this is the only way we're going to deal with this reality.
Yeah, you have to. Imagine if you let every horrible story you have to print, completely devour you. You'd retire at the age of 25. It would be so depressing. I always remember that my grandpa's funeral was the saddest day of my life, but whenever I look back, we laughed so much because my family's approach was to sit around and make jokes and say what an idiot he was because he was such a lovable buffoon. Because if we just sat there feeling sad, it would have made already the worst day of our lives 10 times worse. So we went for the other approach and decided to raise a glass and talk about what a ridiculously lovable idiot he was.
I know there comes a point where things are so terrible that you do have to just, it's like, okay, this is now definitely tipped over into ridiculous. Like, that's the only response now.
Yeah, well, I feel sorry for the satirists of this time because how do you satire the last 10 years
I
when
know the thick of it, like, it is real. Like,
yeah,
I actually worked for the Home Office for a bit, and I can tell you that the thick of it really is real.
yeah,
Like, I've had sort of serious jobs, and I'm like, no, this is my happy place. I like
yeah,
being daft.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I think that's it. I think there's definitely an element of that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. And I feel like we're living in the period now because at school you basically did Egypt, Henry VIII, Second World War. That's it.
yeah,
That's your history class is done. And I feel like we're now living in the first period in a long time that will be studied in schools in the future because
yeah,
everyone's looking at it going, my God, everyone was losing their minds. And did they not realize how insane they all looked? When you read like medieval stories and everyone's completely bonkers and you think, thank God we're not like that anymore. 500 years from now, when they look back on this period, and the Daily Star will be a serious document that they'll be studying in a museum somewhere. They'll be going, wow, everyone had really lost their minds, and there was a lot of aliens around as well.
oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I keep saying to my dad, like, obviously he's older, he's been through some stuff, and I keep going, is this normal? Is this what it was always like? And we just didn't notice because we were kids and stuff. And he's like, no, this isn't normal.
No, but
Yeah.
I asked my dad just 2 weeks ago. I said the world's pretty scary at the moment. There's lots of big egos and lots of powerful men whose mums clearly didn't hug them enough in charge at the moment, and it's pretty terrifying. I said, was the Cold War 10 times worse than this? And Dad went, oh no, this is way scarier than the Cold War ever was. He said the Cold War, he goes, it was sort of this hypothetical threat that never really went anywhere. And he goes, this stuff's going places at the moment. And he
Oh
said this,
God.
and I said, oh no. So I always grew up thinking the Cold War was the most terrifying thing ever. Don't tell me this is worse.
I don't that's really like that's really interesting. I don't know whether to feel comforted or miserable about that. On the one hand, no, no, that is actually the more you kind of delve into it, that's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought he was genuinely going to go, don't be so stupid. The Cold War was terrifying. He goes, we all thought the world was going to end. And he was like, oh God, no, this is way worse. I was like, oh, brilliant.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let's hope that I won't like that's the yeah. We do apocalypse stories. I once did a whole sort of roundup of like an apocalypse. So I'm the features editor. So I'm like Department of Whimsy. Like I'm like we don't I it's nice because I kind of write about within a framework whatever I like. So I'm the sort of slightly self-indulgent. And I did a roundup, and so sometimes I did a roundup of potential apocalypse options, and terrified myself so much. It's like I wish I hadn't done that.
I always think that you watch like those, there's like there was like a trend of doomsday prepper documentaries about 7 or 8 years ago. There'd always be like a bloke in America who's booby trapped his house and built a bunker and got guns and food and stuff like that. And I'm like, I've run out of milk this morning. I'm like, if the apocalypse comes tomorrow, I won't make it till 4 o'clock this afternoon.
I know,
So
absolutely. Did you stockpile during COVID?
no,
We didn't.
no,
No, we were in
go to the
quarantine.
go to the shop every day and see
Yep.
what you can make out of what they've got left was our approach.
Yeah, absolutely. No.
Yeah.
If the apocalypse comes, I mean, I think I'm quite high maintenance. I would disintegrate. If separated from shops, I would disintegrate within about
Yeah.
2 days.
Yeah, I can't do anything for myself. I don't know how to catch wild animals. I don't know how to grow things. Yeah, I honestly I reckon about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on day one of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
In cartoons when
I'm a
you,
writer, you're a talker. Those things aren't useful.
exactly, and when they're deciding who gets to go to the next planet when they restart civilization, they don't need us. We're
No.
gone.
Yeah. We're the decorative knobs on society.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they can add the talkers and the writers when they've settled on Mars for a few hundred years and they think,
They'll
right,
probably make
everything's
their own.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
So yeah. So to sum up, I would
we're
contribute
intrinsically
nothing to
useless.
a post-apocalyptic world, essentially.
Yes.
But in cartoons, like when when they're hungry and they're looking at their mate and they turn into like a chicken drumstick before their very eyes. I reckon about
Yeah.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, day one of the apocalypse, my wife, I'd be looking at her drooling and picturing her as a chicken drumstick. I reckon I'd be useless. I'd be eating my wife before midnight of the first day.
But who do
That
you
sounded
think? I
odd.
mean, do you think your wife would put up with that? Or do
No,
you
she's
think,
actually Well, she's a junior. She did a lot of kickboxing when she was younger, and she was like a junior local kickboxing champion. So she'd be eating me for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I'd be I wouldn't stand a chance.
no, no. Yeah. I'm trying to imagine what I would do in that situation if someone was trying to eat me. I think if I was your wife, I would consider caging you.
Yes,
Uh,
yeah.
yes.
That would be quite merciful of her to even let me continue to exist. To be fair, if I tried to eat her on day
Yeah,
one
but
of the apocalypse.
what are the conversational options we're envisaging in this scenario? Surely she'd be very bored. Because otherwise, then it would be apocalypse and also on your own.
Yeah, that's true. But I think she'd probably, she's a very attractive, lovely woman. She could meet somebody else in the apocalypse, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I feel like I should probably ask you some questions. You met your wife through work, didn't you?
I did. I did meet my wife through work. So I used to do the show before Chris Moyles every morning on Radio X, and my wife Pippa was the executive producer of the Chris Moyles show. And so when I joined the station 6 months in after they'd launched, I was immediately completely smitten and took about 9 months further to finally pluck up the courage to ask her to go for a drink with me, away from the prying eyes of the Chris Moyle show. Because we don't really have any secrets on Radio X. Our life is sort of
Mm.
our listeners' life. So we actually snuck around a bit for a few months and were sort of going on dates on the sly rather than share it with the listeners immediately.
I can imagine that Chris Moyles would probably be nosy. Like,
Yes. Yes, he is incredibly nosy. He's incredibly nosy. And that's the sort of beauty of the Chris Moyle show is that it is an open book and that sort of whatever happens in our life, we sort of are duty bound. It's sort of written unofficially in blood that we then share it, no matter how embarrassing it may be, with our listeners. And so, which is nice because when you meet listeners in the pub and out and about, they know as much about your life as you do. In fact, sometimes they remember it better than I do. Sometimes they come up to me and remind me of things I've talked about that I'd completely forgotten about. So sometimes you finally manage, you've told a really embarrassing story and you've managed to just about cast it away, and then some bloke at a gig comes up to you and reminds you of that time you. Oh, cheers, mate. I just got over that, but yeah, thanks for that.
But I suppose, I mean, okay, I don't want to go on too much about Chris Tarrant, but you did grow up in a famous family. Do you think that kind of prepared you for it at all?
Uh, Yeah, I don't know. I guess it probably did. I've never really given it much thought. I guess it's a weird. I always think it was weirder for me because no, sorry, not as weird for me because when I grew up, Dad was well known as soon as I was born, really.
Yeah.
And like when Millionaire came out when I was really young, and obviously that was such a massive hit straight away, that it's sort of all I knew was Dad being well
Yeah.
known. So to me, it wasn't weird to be, you know, out at lunch and a random person comes up and asks dad to sign their napkin or have a photo or or any of that sort of stuff was never weird to me. But I think it must have been weirder for my older siblings who sort of watched dad become famous and watched their life get strange. um
Ah, so you're one of the younger ones then.
I'm
How
the
many have you
youngest of,
got?
yeah, yeah, well, we're a bit of a mess, but in total there's six of us siblings. There's stepsisters and half sisters and all that sort of stuff. But we're all very close and we all grew up together. So there's six of us in total. So I'm the youngest of the six. So I think I had it much easier than them because by the time I can really remember, Dad was well known. So I don't know any different. But I think it must be strange for people that have it thrust upon them later in life. It must be odd.
Yeah, definitely. I would hate it. I would hate to be famous.
Yeah.
Having met a variety of famous people, I feel like there's the kind of like David Beckham sort of extremely famous level who've probably had enough expensive therapy and then all of the middle range. It
Yes.
seems like a very difficult thing.
Yes, I think to a degree, because unless you're, the David Beckham or Tom Cruise of the world, I think the rest of us who are down there at, Z-list level, like myself, you can sort of control how famous you are. Like if you really want to be famous, you can go out there and say yes to everything, and you can make sure I could post photos in my underpants every day on Instagram. Not that anyone would want to see it, but you can do things to get attention if you
Yeah.
desperately want them. Or, in my case, I only say yes to things that I really enjoy doing. So I think you can sort of control it until you get to that silly level where you're Tom Cruise, you're David Beckham, and then I don't know how those guys. I don't think I'd ever leave the house. I think I'd just invite my mates round to me and say, "Sorry, I'm not going out for dinner tonight, but we can all have a lovely dinner at my mansion."
Yeah. I feel like they've had got so much experience in it that it must be, but the kind of the wanting fame seems like a very painful thing to want.
Yeah,
You're so vulnerable in that position.
I
Like,
think I think wanting fame is so destructive because then if you don't get it, what do you do then?
yeah,
So I think just do your job and try and do it well. And if it leads to that and that's what you wanted, then fair play to you and good luck and enjoy it. But I think people wanting to be famous is a really dangerous mindset to get in because then otherwise you're only, 99% of you aren't going to achieve that dream. So just do stuff that makes you happy. And if in my case, I love doing a radio show, if you do it well, then that sort of comes with it. But you can't set out going, I'm going to do this radio show because I want to be famous.
yeah. Well, I mean, you've done, I would say Z list seems a bit harsh. Like, I spoke to maybe you're very well known at the Daily Star, but I spoke to the team about, oh, do you want to speak to Toby Tarrant? And they were all very like, you know, they listened to your show and stuff, and they were pleased. And like, so you do things that you enjoy on the radio show. What would you say that you've enjoyed the most over the
On the
last
radio.
over the last 10 years? Yeah, what have you been enjoying about?
There's so much to begin with. I mean, I tell you what, not having to do early mornings anymore was a big moment. Moving to daytimes was a very nice moment after a couple of years, and then covering Chris Moyles and Johnny Vaughan, which I have to sometimes because I cover them every time they're off now, which is a massive honor. But the first time I covered Chris Moyles, I couldn't believe I was saying the words "Morning, Toby Tarrant in for Chris Moyles." Like, do you know that was mind blowing? And I've just done 2 weeks on breakfast, so then I always try and remind myself to not take it for granted. Like, I find myself whinging about the early alarm, and then I'm like, "You're covering Chris Moyles, mate." Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can't whinge about the early alarm clock. Like, a lot of people would rip their arm off to be in the position that you are covering Chris Moyles and Johnny Vaughan. So those always love covering those guys and doing my show and interacting with the listeners. The listeners are great. We've put on some amazing gigs over the years with our Radio X Presents gigs. Introducing Kasabian in Sheffield actually at the Lead Mill. Um,
Oh,
introducing
R.I.P.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I know, tragically, but yeah, introducing bands in front of a few thousand people is a proper buzz that you'll never get bored of doing that. I would say the proudest thing I've done on Radio X was I can't believe how quickly it's come around, but last October, pedaling a unicorn pedalo down a river for 5 days to raise about
Yes,
300. Yeah,
I
we
was
raised
looking
about
at that.
£300,000. But your
That's
question was,
amazing.
it was incredible, and the listeners like were just so great, and they proved how brilliant they are. In fact, whenever we're raising money for charities, they outperform per person every radio station in the country. That they have a lovely connection with us, and they sort of show how much they appreciate us when it comes to charity stuff. But yeah, to raise £300,000 pedaling a unicorn peddler down the river for 5 days. But you said what's been your favourite, and I'm like. I don't know if I could say that was my favorite because it was one of the
Well, it
worst
doesn't sound
weeks
like
of my life.
fun.
Yeah, well, it
Yes,
was
it
one of the
sounds.
worst weeks of my life. But and if you had asked me, well,
Worry
paint
about
us no
waterborne
memory.
diseases. On the
Yeah, luckily I
Thames.
didn't fall in. Luckily I stayed in the pedalo at all times. Although when we got to the Thames on the final day, there's swell. It got a bit dicey, and I thought, this is how I go. What an embarrassing, bleak way to die.
No, that'd be a great way to die. Falling
It's not-
out of a unicorn pedalo
yeah, yeah, you've got to go somehow, I guess. It would have a Wikipedia entry of its own probably 50 years from now. But yeah, so
yeah.
it's my proudest moment was the pedalo, but I wouldn't say it was my favorite because if you had asked me on about the Wednesday or Thursday, are you having fun? I would have, politely told you to disappear, I think.
I think it's like that with us. Like I kind of there's a lot of the time where it's like in the moment, are you having fun? No. Uh,
Yes.
no,
Yeah,
I'm
because
extremely busy.
yes.
And then you kind of look back and it's like, oh, look at that ridiculous thing that we made.
Yeah.
Yes, I am proud of that.
Yeah, well,
For better or for
again,
worse.
well, you have to like because neither of us do like really sensible jobs. Well, sometimes on a bank holiday Monday, I'll on air, I'll whinge that Chris Moyles and Johnny Vaughan have got the day off, and yet I've had to drag myself out of bed early in the morning. And then you'll get a lovely message from some adorable listener going later on in the show, going, "Hi Toby, loving the show, loving the show. Thanks for all the tunes. Just finished a 19-hour night shift as a nurse," and I'm like. Oh yeah, I could probably stop whinging about my 3 hours of radio I get to do, which actually is really fun when I take a step back from it because everything becomes a job after a while, right? But I
Yeah.
do I do have moments like where I'm whinging about having to come in on a bank holiday Monday where I realise that what I do is ridiculous and I'm very lucky to do it. And people listening to the show who message in and love the show every day are actually doing stuff that's important.
You're making me feel like I should be more grateful. I think I
I'm
st
sounding good now, but if you listen to me every day, I whinge all day.
Let's be more mindful about our stupid employment.
Yes, exactly. But without letting our bosses know that to take us for granted. We have to basically be appreciative without letting them know how lucky we are.
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. We're lucky,
They
but
have to think that
still,
we're really
you're
struggling and that,
lucky too.
yeah, we have to make our bosses think that every day is a struggle and they're lucky to have us. That's the key to life.
Yes.
They can never know that we're enjoying ourselves.
I think they probably know, unfortunately.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of stuff. I'll ask you what are your plans for the future? What are you going to do for the next 10 years?
Oh, blimey. To be honest, if you've ever heard my show and how terrible I am at pressing the wrong buttons and taking the radio station off air, I can't believe that I'm sat here. Well, we're coming up to our 10th birthday at Radio X, which is a few
Yeah.
weeks away. And I've been lucky enough to be a part of it for about 9.5 of those 10 years. And to be honest, every Monday morning when I turn up and my pass still works on the entrance of the building, I'm amazed they've still let me in. So I'm not planning too far ahead. So for now, I'm very, very grateful and very happy with my job at Radio X. Thank you, bosses, if you're listening. And I'm sorry that I keep taking the radio station off air. And I'll try and be better in the future if you continue to employ me.
Yes, and I also very much enjoy my job and never complain about it.
Yes, exactly. If you're listening, dear Daily Star leader.
Yes.
But we've got exciting plans for the 10th birthday, but genuinely, they won't let me know about them
Oh,
because, well, when we launched Radio X Classic Rock, which was a big deal, my boss told me in privacy and told me not to tell anyone. And in the walk up the stairs from the office to the radio studio, I forgot about that. And luckily, the mics were down. Immediately told Chris Moyles and the rest of the team and went, "Hey, good news about Radio X Classic Rock." And they went, "What? What are you talking about?" And I went, "Oh, yeah, I was told not to say anything." So since then, uh, the boss won't let me know anything important and they keep me away from all important meetings. So all I've been told so far is to keep an eye out. We've got big plans for our 10th birthday, but they genuinely won't tell me what they are.
oh, well, that's good. I hope they're not going to do anything awful to you or anything.
Yeah, I'm hoping they're more nice things for our listeners than bad things for me, but I've been stung before, so we'll all find out in a few weeks. Sometimes bad things for me are nice things for our listeners. Those two things can coexist.
Yeah. Like, you know, I will watch this with interest.
Yes, so yeah, I've got no idea what the plan is, but I've told it's exciting.